Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 1st, 2023 Design Review Board meeting. First up is roll call.
Vice Chair Chung.
Here.
Chair Kim is absent. Board Member Malad.
Here.
Board Member Walser.
Here.
Board Member Odorisio.
Thank you. I'd also like to note that if there's anybody here for 55 Mount Tiburon Road item, that application has been withdrawn and will not be heard tonight. We now move to oral communications from the public for anybody that wishes to address the Design Review Board for any items that are not on this evening's Design Review Board agenda. And with our new hybrid format, do we need to ask Zoom each time? So if there's anybody that's on the Zoom, is anybody on the Zoom call?
There's no one raising hand in Zoom.
All right, thank you very much. And now staff briefing.
No staff briefing tonight.
All right. And with that, we now move to consider adoption of the minutes from the April 20th, and we'll do them separately. So first we'll consider adoption of the minutes from the April 20th Design Review Board meeting. Is there any comments or edits to those minutes? All right, could we get a motion, please? Motion. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. And could we, so used to Zoom format. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. And all those opposed? No. So we adopt the minutes from the April 20th Design Review Board meeting. And now we go to the May 4th Design Review Board meeting minutes. Is there any comments on those minutes? No comment. No comment. All right. Can we have a motion? All right. Second. All right. And all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No. And with that, we adopt the minutes from the May 4th Design Review Board meeting. Moving right along to public hearings. So we'll go to PH2 item, which is the application for 283 Cecilia Way. The way that we do our Design Review Board meetings is the applicant will have 20 minutes to come up and present the application, at which point we will then, we might have some questions, but we will then allow the public to come up and speak. We do ask that anybody that comes up and speaks to please state your name and address for the record. And then each individual from the public will have 3 minutes, at which point we'll give the applicant 5 minutes to come back up and address any of the concerns that were raised on the application. And at that point, we will close the public hearing portion of the application, bring it back to the board, and go from there. So with that, is the applicant for 283 Cecilia Way ready? All right.
So just back and forth, and then if you want to highlight anything,
I'm sorry. Oh, that's got his own. Perfect. And then up and down. Okay. All right. All right. Good evening. My name is Carrie White. My wife, Carrie Carpenter, and I are the owners of 283 Cecilia Way. I'm not sure. Up or down. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So we're proposing to replace the existing 1,412 square foot structure built in 1953. The proposed new house will be 2,622 square feet with a 598 square foot garage with for a total of 3,220 square feet under the current allowable FAR. So our family, we're a family of 6. Our 2 boys, Langton and Jack's here with us tonight. He's 6 and Langton's 11, sorry. My wife and parents, Susan and Joe Carpenter, here in the picture with my mother. My wife is a software engineer and a senior manager for Sony Interactive Entertainment and works with teams on PlayStation 5. I've been an insurance broker for nearly 3 decades and specialize in insurance for residential builders and developers. We own more than a dozen rental units and own 2 businesses. We're active in our boys' education, youth sports, and our church. We've never built a house before, and we're not developers, and this is a pretty scary proposition for us. It's long been my wife's dream to move to Tiburon. When 283 Cecilia Way came on the market, we jumped at the chance to move into the Bel Air Estates neighborhood. We were drawn to this charming neighborhood for children with its central protected park, shopping and entertainment within walking distance, and great schools. We paid a premium at the time to ensure we landed this opportunity. Since purchasing 283 Cecilia, we've been in regular contact with our neighbors. We've shared our goals. We've listened to their suggestions. We've also been monitoring past design review board hearings to be sure our plans would adhere to both the rules and the norms for our neighborhood. The property is 7,503 square feet. It's 61 feet wide and 122 feet deep. There's a power pole in the southwest corner of the lot, and there's a sewer manhole cover in the southeast corner lot. Using the center edge as our baseline and grade of 9124, the site slopes upwards about 16 inches to the back of the lot, which is these two areas in the back here, this one and this one. The site is on bay mud. The current house slopes nearly 5 inches toward the left perimeter. Test helical piles were driven in these green areas, and we confirmed that 50-foot piles would be necessary to support the house and our pool. Every project starts with goals. Our goals from the start have been a room for our family of 6, including a master suite for us, a private master suite for Joe and Susan, bedrooms for our children, a home office for Carrie, a level in-out accessible floor plan for Susan, a 2-car garage, storage in the garage suitable for a family of 6, a pool, no natural gas, all electric house, solar power, solar battery backup, solar water heating for the pool, water conservation, modest protection from historical neighborhood flooding, and a 9-foot interior ceiling to be more current with newer homes built in the greater Tiburon area. Everything starts with a floor plan. We went through many iterations to get it right. We're very pleased with the final floor plan. We flipped our initial floor plan to maximize the morning sun in our 2 master bedrooms. With the pool my wife had always wanted. We have a semi-private outdoor patio for my, for my mother-in-law in the front. We minimized the visual nuisance of the power pole in the front of the house on my mother's patio. We reduced the impact of the potential necessary in-ground power vault, reducing privacy for her patio. And at 16 inches above grade, it gives us a modest additional flood protection and keeps our house low and will be nearly level with the current backyard. It's a level in, level out accessible floor plan for my mother-in-law, and my father-in-law will enjoy his he'll have his private lounge for his sanity down here. So initially we had hoped for a modern farmhouse design similar to other neighborhood homes. And starting with a floor plan we were happy with, we then struggled with roof geometry for aesthetics and constructability to maximize our south-facing exposure. Our preliminary design included a number of gables. During the hearing for 85 Harriet, we were alarmed by the conflict about the proposed roof shape and that both of our neighbors objected. Knowing our design had similar problems that could not be solved by a hip roof, we immediately changed our design direction from a modern farmhouse to a flatter contemporary roof style. Knowing also that we wanted to avoid neighbor conflict, we added additional goals to reduce visual and audio nuisance to our neighbors. So our proposed design, we're very pleased with. It's got interior sill heights of 9 feet as we'd hoped, contemporary flat roof plan, and the majority of the roof edges on the neighbor sides are 10 feet in the back. We moved the HVAC condenser roofs from their usual location on the ground on the side of the house to the roof to minimize neighbor noise impact. We raised the wedge roof volume over the great room in an ideal angle for solar power and additional benefits of an east and west and clear story windows for early morning and afternoon sun, and to reduce the side view of the solar panels from our neighbors on the sides. Slightly taller garage and front master unit suite volumes hide the solar panels and proposed HVAC condensers. A black standing seam metal roof will further camouflage both our solar electric and solar water heating panels. lowered the pool, and we also lowered the pool equipment into the back in a sunken pit to reduce the equipment noise and nuisance. That's, the pit would be right back in here. All right. Another thing, features, this is the front patio for my mother-in-law. And see, it's gonna be hidden behind some hedges. These are the gates we're gonna use on the sides. And you can see from the front that the solar is obscured from the street because of the volumes up front. You've seen these are on the plans. Here's about the 10-foot we were talking about on the elevation here on the corners. This side is 10 feet. It pitches up to about 11 in the back here. Like everyone here tonight, we appreciate the special character of the Bel Air neighborhood. We also understand the importance of neighborhood feedback. Originally, we'd intended to have an open house or other neighborhood gathering to introduce our project and invite feedback. Concerns about COVID made us rethink those plans. With neighbor awareness and buy-in in mind, we elected to go a different way suitable for the times. A project website, postcards sent to every neighborhood in the Bel Air neighborhood, and a sign in our front yard that had our contact information linked to the website. While unusual, we believe this effort was successful and have received several positive neighbor responses through our website. Despite previous personal conversations with our neighbors on either side, our website, the postcards, and our yard sign, we were disappointed when both our nearest neighbors elected to contact the planning department to complain our project first, instead of contacting us directly. While we expected this from one, we were surprised and very disappointed by the other. Nevertheless, encouraged by the planning staff, we've spent countless hours and money since March 9th, carefully reviewing and responding in good faith to each of their specific concerns and offered reasonable suggestions to both. Please note our correspondence with 279 Cecilia is more than 62 pages of emails, including 20 emails from 279 Cecilia, 9 responses from us, and 3 separate written complaints to the planning department of date. Correspondence with 287 Cecilia is nearly 100 pages, including their 2 written complaints to planning, 10 emails from me trying to address those complaints, and only 4 replies from them. You may hear complaints tonight about privacy, about shade, light, sound, clear story, HVAC, mechanical room, windows, landscaping. Starting with the easiest one first. We've already agreed with all parties that we're going to have the 2 light canisters on either side of the garage to be no higher than 94 inches, making both the current fence height to the left. We believe the current illustrations reflect this, as the garage is only 8 feet tall. Excuse me, the garage door is only 8 feet tall. As depicts the clear story, our proposed great room is not exceptionally tall relative to other neighborhood renovations. There are many neighborhood examples of raised roofs, some as high or higher than we have proposed. Some are right on the property line, including the addition of 50 Pamela Court approved last September. Because of the irregular shape of our clear story, it's also 50% less massive than some of these other additions that you see in this picture. As a wedge, our shape was intended to lower our roof volume, and being in the center of the yard, I think it's clear that you can't see it until you go way back in each of the people's yards. That's intentional. We did, hearing the complaints about potential shadow concerns, we did hire a shadow consultant who did a study about the potential shadows for our house. And they did a really good job and produced a number of different illustrations for various dates and times throughout the year. While our great room will shade 287 Cecilia in the late afternoon for a brief period, less than an hour or so, the bulk of their yard shade is coming from their own home and the existing fence. A number of people have also asked about why do we go with a flat roof and not a more traditional roof, and that was also intentional, because we knew that the massing of a 4 and 12 pitch roof on the right here is clearly larger in volume than the flat roof that we have designed. So we had these images drawn up and to show these effects, and I believe these images show that we're doing the best we can to keep our house as low as possible. Now, my neighbor sent me this picture, and I can't deny, you will be able to see our roof. I mean, that's the way it is. I'm sorry. But when I turn, I can see his roof too. You know, and seeing a roof is not, I think, a protected thing or not. So I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it is. In terms of compromise, I am prepared to offer a couple compromises though, and I've relayed these compromises to both neighbors. While our original design was far below the allowed height of our neighborhood and is 20 feet from the fence line on either side, we told both neighbors that we will lower the ultimate roof height from 1611 from 1711. That's 1 foot. We've also told both neighbors that we will have no can lights in the great room ceiling and install pendants instead with light fixtures below the bottom of the clear story windows to reduce potential light pollution. This was a concern raised during the 40 Pamela court hearing. We cannot agree to lower the roof to 16 feet as the neighbors have asked because we would lose our clear story windows. Now, noise is a concern for us too, but there's a debate like, well, how much noise is acceptable? It's my understanding that Tiburon requires all HVAC equipment to be less than 55 decibels at the fence line. They have a complicated formula to ensure these guidelines are met. The Mitsubishi condenser units run at a maximum volume of 56 decibels, 1 decibel above Tiburon's own standard for air conditioning units and similar mechanical equipment. We had first intended to put our HVAC units behind the garage and closest to the 279 Cecilia Way, then agreed to move them to the other side as a concession to 279 Cecilia. In a note to planning, 287 Cecilia Way suggested, not to us, that we move the HVAC units to the other roof, either the roof above our entryway or the ground outside our front door in their attachment 13. This is option A, option B. We're prepared to make the following compromise number 4. We have communicated to both 287 Cecilia Way and 279 Cecilia Way that we are agreeable to moving the HVAC units to the area above the entryway in location A. Right here, between the garage mass and the master bedroom mass. So it's going to shield it on the other side. And it'll be pointing back towards the solar array. Here's a detail of that from the front. And with we're going to have a pony wall in front of it. And then the shielded on the back with those with these covers. So the short wall will be clad in the same wood material as the area around the front door to hide the units from the street. The mini split condensers will also be surrounded by an air deco or other cover that will further reduce the already low sound of 56 decibels, another 30% to 39 decibels. Located here, they are also shielded, like I said, by the walls of the garage of the master bedroom and will be pointed north towards the solar panels. Something's been brought up about the mechanical room, and we proposed locating the hydro loop and gray water recycling, the gray water recycling and electric water heater in insulated closets on the exterior on the east facade. Both insulated closets will be behind a separate metal clad 1 3/4 inch exterior door, 1 for each unit, and the exterior doors are necessary to service each of the units. The hydro loop operates at only 46 decibels, which is below the 55 necessary at the fence line. The electric water heater is virtually silent. Insulated in closets behind steel doors, both will be silent and far below the city sound guidelines. Moving them to the garage, as was suggested, would add significant additional cost and reduce their utility. Moving the doors into this inside into Joe's Lounge would reduce the use of Joe's Lounge. I regret we cannot compromise in this item, although we did consider it. Much has been talked about our window heights. 279 Cecilia Way and 287 Cecilia Way have regularly asked us to move our windows, raise our windows up or lower their maximum height. 279 Cecilia Way has also battled us about our hedge choices. In the end, we agree about privacy is important, but think the best compromise are changes to our neighbors' fences. So compromise number 5, we will pay the full cost for the planning, permits, and installation of a second layer of trellis on the existing 8-foot fence that runs 48 feet between our properties of 279 Cecilia Way to look similar to this picture. To make them not see-through so neither of us can see into the other's yard. We'll also paint and stain this additional trellis work as best we can so that it closely matches the current color of the existing fence. Compromise number 6, we'll also pay the full cost for the planning, permits, and modification of the back portion of the fence of 279 Cecilia Way and the entire length of the fence at 287 Cecilia Way from our side so that it will be more structurally sound and include a 2-layer trellis similar to this so that it will not be see-through either. We'll also paint and stain any modifications of the fence and additional trellis work so that they closely match the current color of the existing fence and either fence, so neither fence will fall down in the future. I'm sorry, if either fence were to fall down in the future, we'll pay to put it back up and strengthen it further. If either fence cannot be moved or made strong enough to hold the trellis and repaired after it should fall down, we'll pay the cost to replace the fence with a new 8-foot fence of similar style to the front 48 feet of the fence we share with 279 Cecilia Way. So our, here's some issues that are illustrations showing the fence plus the addition on the front portion, the front 48 feet of the, what we share with 279 Cecilia Way. It's already 8 feet, but we're talking about adding a second piece of trellis on the backside. So that will be opaque. On the 287 Cecilia Way in the front, the room will be a little bit higher than it is right now. And we're proposing adding some trellis work at the top there. And then the back, the ground actually slopes upwards. And so we'll be adding trellis to the top there. This is what the fence looked like before at 287 Cecilia Way with this addition of 2 8-foot panels to shield the things. This panel was removed so they could take the picture from the window of their kitchen.
And I'd ask that the public don't interrupt the presentation.
So these are just showing the fence heights right now that we share between 283 and 287 Cecilia Way right now. And it shows that former trellis there. And here's their 6-foot fence. This is that's a trellis we're talking about. Here's what we're talking about adding. Here's the other side of 287, the fence height. Now, you know, the landscaping, our original landscaping, lots has been talked about the landscaping, but our original landscaping inspiration was Mediterranean yards of Santa Barbara Spanish colonial homes. We'd investigated rainwater capture. While our designed roof should catch upwards of 40,000 gallons of water annually, the cost to store that water on the site is prohibitive. A single 10,000 gallon underground tank will cost upwards of $35,000. So we did discover something else, which is the Hydroloop, which for $12,000 to $15,000 is going to nearly double the use of our domestic water consumption. And so we picked plants that could absorb this regular water production year round. Now I'm going to turn it over to Pete, our landscape architect, to talk a little bit more about our hedges and the native species, and then I'm going to close.
So you're actually at 15 seconds remaining. So we you'll have 5 minutes after the public speaks. So if you want to use that time for the landscape architect, but I'm going to.
All I want to say just in closing is that we'd like you to approve tonight. We've worked really hard to work with our neighbors, and you know, we want to get this project started before August 1st. We want to beat the rains. We've seen other projects delayed because of the rains, and you know, sadly my mother-in-law is not in good health, and we'd like to see this house built before she dies. So that's our goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for the applicant before we move on to the public? No, it would be for the, I'm sorry, the board members. Yeah, the board members. The public will have a chance to speak. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? No. Oh, yeah.
I just have a couple of questions. I saw the shadow study was for the impact on 287. Was there something similarly done for 279?
It showed aspects of 279. If you look at it closely, it's showing some shadows on 279. But really the main concern for everybody was the late afternoon sun on 287. That was the impetus. It cost us $5,000 to get that study done. Yeah.
Okay. And then was there in that study, did it show any differences in the impact with that 16'11" peak of the roof that you suggested?
Well, I mean, obviously, if we drop the roof by a foot, it's going to reduce the shade, right? But it was based on 1711.
Okay.
And once again, let's just be super clear about the 1711 height. That's from the base at 0 in the front. In the back, it's really 16.7. If you took your tape and you put to the top of the story poles, the 16'7" would be the north facade, not 17 feet 11. It's because the land slopes upwards, and we've had a lot of confusion about how the ground slopes.
Thank you.
Question?
Quickly, you mentioned this gable design was not something that either neighbor wanted. Could you just tell me a little bit more about why they did not want that, and also what a gable?
We didn't present it to them. And the reason why was because 85 Harriet had a very similar gable end facing 95 Harriet. And both the neighbors on either side of us assigned a petition fighting the high roof wall that was facing their house. And so we knew that if we did that double gable sidewall to have south facing roof, that we'd have this 16-foot tall wall facing their houses. So, we opted instead to go with a flat roof, which gave us a 10-foot side profile rather than 16-foot at the top of the peak.
And the current wall height right now that will become 10 foot is how high was that now?
Well, there is no current wall to really match it because the house ends, they have an addition in the back that our house doesn't match up against. So I really couldn't tell you. I haven't gone out and measured the existing, but that's coming down. And the interior heights are 8 feet, I think. Plus, the other thing too is we have to do this, at the impetus of 279 Cecilia Way, she mentioned the fact that there was a historic flooding. And so that kind of got us a little nervous about, her concerns about flooding. And so we had this kind of double whammy of like, well, do we raise the height of the floor by, how many feet for flood? And then, but we got to keep it low. How do we do that? And so we've felt a compromise of 16 inches that was comparable to, once again, the finished floor. So it's flat out the back. We wanted a level in, level out house for my mother-in-law. And so we thought 16 inches was a decent compromise.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, with that, we will open it up to the public. We ask that anybody who would like to speak, please come up, speak clearly into microphone. Again, if you could state your name and address, and we will have a timer on the television, I do believe, that will keep everybody to 3 minutes. So who would like to go first?
Okay. My name is Jim Fitzgerald. I live at 287 Cecilia Way on the east side of 283 Cecilia. I believe the board has read all of my emails and understands my objections, so I will just state our most serious concerns. The three main objections were the noise impacts, the privacy impacts, and the light impacts. I only have 3 minutes, so I will focus on the noise impacts. The noise of the sound impacts come from the HVAC equipment placed on the roof directly opposite of the bay window. I see he's changed that too. I had no knowledge of that. When I pointed the other locations, point A and point B, he rejected those as far as I know and asked to have it placed further back. I think did you state that you were going to?
If you could address the board as opposed to
Just,
yeah,
okay.
sorry.
Sorry. From his presentation, it appears that he placed it in one of the places I recommended, which would be location A, which is a different story. And I think he also showed he was going to place it in a sound acoustical enclosure. So, that kind of changes my whole attitude toward that. We were concerned about the noise. He moved it to the front between the two roofs, not further back as the last time he responded to me. So if he's going to move it forward in the closure, I don't really think I can complain. I think the best area would have been on the ground level along the garage. But You know, again, I wasn't aware of the change until he presented it here, so I just want to verify that before I comment any further and just leave that hang for a minute. And my other complaint about the noise was the placement of the hydro loop equipment. That was placed exactly on the opposite side of the fence, about 6 foot from the property line. And it's exactly opposite my bay window in my kitchen. And I was concerned about the noise from that. I asked him in an email to just add, because he said there's hardly any noise from it. I asked him if he would relocate the door to the inside. He's declining that. I still think that's a good idea. It seems that he did make some concessions on some noise proofing, so I think I kind of have to let that one go. So that's all. I have to, was prepared for a certain statement, everything changed, so I'll just have to do that on the fly, but before I remove my objections to the placement of the HVAC equipment, I'd like to verify that clearly. And after that, if it is in that spot and not the spot he originally planned to put between the roofs, but further back, which would impact the two properties. It looks like I'm up.
Yeah.
Okay, but I think you get the idea. So I was totally unprepared for this. So I just wanted to deal with it straight up.
right.
Okay, and so for that, I'll just include my statement.
Thank you. All right, anybody else?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Shadon. I live at 279 Cecilia Way. A couple of you have been to my property. Unfortunately, I did not want to spend any time on the he said, she said type of answer, but I do have to answer that about in terms of 85 Harriet, that roof was lowered. It has a different orientation than our layout between my house and 283. And that was lowered at the request of 95 Harriet because it was shading their yard. I have tried to have conversations with the applicant. I've been yelled and screamed at on the street when I asked him to come to my property and see what was being done. It is important for me to state that I have not removed any of my trellis. My existing fence is the way it is. I have a piece here to show you all. And the reason it is the open trellis design is because we have severe winds.
And if you just either take the microphone with you or wait until you get back up.
Okay, so we have, which if the applicant had spent more than 15 minutes at his property, he would know. We have a lot of winds. My fences have come down. The previous owner of 283, the last time the fence between us came down, on the recommendation of a contractor, we went with this open design. The fence is not 8 feet high. Alex has actually been on my property and measured it in the front. And so the reason for this design is so that the wind can go through and not take the fence over. I am uncomfortable with the compromise that his promises to pay because he does not maintain the landscaping on his property that impacts me negatively. We have had many emails where I asked him to come cut his bougainvillea that was growing on my roof that needed to be removed for a re-roofing project. That was not done. You all have no way of knowing this. You've read my objections. I have a new objection in that I need a shadow study. My solar installer who came today said that they cannot guarantee that the solar that was planned way back in January I will get the megawatts that I need based on the new roof design, which is 10 foot high. Board member Diorcio has asked, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it, the name. He has asked, what is the existing height? It's 7 feet. It's 7 feet all along there. It's not 10 feet. You all have seen the pictures from my house. Alex has been in my house and seen it. I think that we need to take some time here. I do need a shadow study performed to give to my solar designer to guarantee that I get the solar that I have paid for, which These story polls and these plans were not done at the time that I paid for that. So it is important. You have seen my other concerns in terms of I can't talk anymore. So sorry, I'm out of town.
Thank you.
But I will say that it's an unfair process where we keep seeing these changes and we only have 3 minutes to talk. But the applicant gets 20 minutes, has made all sorts of comments about me, about my other neighbor.
And we've always done 3 minutes, but I will say that all the late mails that have been received have been provided to the board and we've read them.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Would anybody else like to come up and speak?
My name is Marian Fitzgerald and I live at 287 Cecilia Way, east side of 283 Cecilia Way. My husband has already stated our concerns, but I want to address the clear story proposed. Town of Tiburon increased the lot coverage to 35% with a 600 square foot garage, which Mr. White is planning with a 43% lot coverage. This was done to avoid 2 stories. Mr. White is proposing 1711 Height Peak, but as of yesterday, Mr. White is willing to lower it to 1611, which is a big improvement, but for us, because of visual and light impacts, it would be best to go back to the original proposed height of 16.6. Mr. White states in a statement to you that he has been in regular contact with his neighbors. He shared his goals and listened to our suggestions. None of this is true. There was no communication. Mr. White emailed us in August of 2022 his plans, which were still in early stages. October 2022, he listed 283 Cecilia for sale, and at the end of November listed it for rent. The next thing, early March 2023, was receiving his postcard in the mail with no input from us or any communication. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing none. Actually, let's also open anybody that's on Zoom that might be listening to this. If you could use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen or *9 if you're on a phone. And we'll let you in to speak.
I'm going to wait for 10 seconds for the hand to be raised.
Okay, thanks.
I'm seeing none.
Thank you. With that, we will bring it back to the applicant who has 5 minutes to address any of the concerns that were raised.
Thank you. So I apologize if I misspoke about the trellis. It was the trellis between 283 and 287. There was 2 panels of 8 feet long, and one of them was removed to take the picture of the HVAC units were in the proposed location where they are. Hey, this is scary, building a house. We have a lot of money invested in this thing. We paid $1 million, $1.7 million for the property, which we're going to tear down. And our budget putting a new house in is another million plus, maybe another 1.7 million. It's true that we put the property up for sale in November because we were starting to lose confidence in whether this was the best fit for our family or not. And when we didn't get numbers that were right, we decided to move ahead, mainly because of my wife. Actually, I had offered another property and my wife said, no, we want to do this one in Tiburon. And so we took it off the market. We moved ahead with the plans in full steam with our architect and landscape architect from there. We did rent it out because, owning a $1.7 million piece of property that's just vacant is a hard deal. I think our burn rate is like $9,000 a month. So having any kind of rent helps us offset that cost. And I apologize if that's offensive to other people. We did get an offer to buy the house from our tenant. And after a lot of feedback, back and forth to the neighbors, we were just wondering, is this really worth it to do it? And because the neighbor our tenant didn't offer a sufficient amount of money for it, and or terms that we couldn't agree with, we decided to move forward. I don't know what more communications to be had with people. I've talked cordially to both our neighbors on a number of occasions. There was an incident in front of the house when we were doing our helical piers, and I apologize for losing my cool on that day. My wife was in the hospital. She's been in the hospital for 12 days with complications from appendicitis. And I was a little upset about that. And when confronted about what we were doing, I said we were drilling some test piers for the house to determine the depths we were gonna have to do so we could price the foundation. That wasn't sufficient for my neighbor, so she went and called the police on me. And then she called planning and made as much trouble as she possibly could. And then told me that she was not gonna allow this to sail through tonight. And you know, that's disappointing.
Please, I ask the public, please.
So anyway, once again, look, we're reasonable people. We're trying to communicate. I'm sorry that people didn't get more feedback other than the plans a number of times and lots of conversations in the street about the cost and burden of this particular project on our family. A lot's been said about where we live and our lack of knowledge of the neighborhood and some other things, which I think are all irrelevant and intended to be inciting. So look, we've tried to go about this really professionally. We've offered many times to make concessions, and our hope was to make concessions that we could all agree to before tonight's meeting. And sadly, that is not the case. But be that as it may, if there are other concessions that are necessary, we're open to some suggestions. I've just made my points about where we think concessions can be made and where they can't be made. And I'm hoping the board will approve our project as proposed with the concessions we've already proposed tonight. Thank you.
All right, before we close, any questions for the architect or landscape architect?
I have some questions of the applicant. What is the FAR that you're proposing on this? Or area ratio?
Expert on that. I'm gonna have my architect answer that question.
Okay.
Matt Waitkes, MW Design. So the FAR that we are proposing is, I've got to grab my glasses. So the existing FAR is 18% and the proposed FAR, an allowable FAR, we're doing here, allowable lot coverage. Bear with me.
It's right here. Here it is right here. The allowable lot coverage is 10%, 750 square feet, plus 2,000 square foot residential area, plus 600 for the garage. Our proposed lot is 8.2% or 622 square feet, plus 2,000, plus 598 for the garage.
Could you give me the total square footage on that?
It's 3,222.
And the lot coverage?
43%.
Okay, and could you tell me a little more about the foundations? Are these helical piers you're using?
We'll let the homeowner talk about it.
Sorry about that. We've gone through a number of structural design things. Initially, we were planning to keep the existing foundation, but when we found out the foundation was tilting 5%, we were worried, or 5 inches. We bagged that idea, and then we went to we got more reports done, and we were leaning towards a crawl space with a grade beam foundation. But unfortunately, in order to keep it as low as we possibly can, that would mean the entire crawl space would be underground, and we'd have all kinds of issues about waterproofing and other issues. So we'd have to do a French drain around the whole property. We'd have to waterproof the interior. We'd have to put a rat slab in. Then we'd have to then
So
put
what did you
joists.
come up with?
So I think we're going to do a structural mat slab. It'll be faster, and now the only issues that we're arm wrestling over is how many helical piers we're going to need.
So these are helical piers that are just drilled into the ground, and they're 8 feet on center each way or something like that.
Well, I can't say they're going to be 8 feet. I mean, they could be closer than that. I don't know. That's what we're arguing about right now. So the debate is whether it's going to be 30 or 50. And the quote we had before we got here tonight was $4,250 per pier, which makes our helical piers, $212,000 for just the house. And then we would do the pool. The initial drawings we had were, there's a debate whether we need helical piers for the pool at all, because the weight of the water is less than the ground is going to displace. And the piers were 14 piers. And so that's going to add another $60,000 just for the piers. So that was a big shock. I think we're going to go, it's the only person really pushing for the helical piers on the pool is the pool architect. And I think we're going to design it without the piers for the pool. And for the house, I don't know, we got to talk about how we can make the slab as light as possible to limit the number of piers.
Okay, that's all I need. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there anything else? Great.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Oh.
Could you help me just understand just a little bit about your garage height? And obviously the height of the garage has nothing to do with the vehicles that you can park in there. Why the additional height? Why is that important? And can you explain to me why that relates to your clear windows?
Well, I'm not sure how it relates to the clear story windows. Maybe you can ask your question a little bit differently, but let me answer about the garage first, and that is right now, as a family of six, we have a much larger garage where we live right now. And the garage had two benefits of being the height it is. It has a more roof area for storage above, and we're gonna have storage up to the ceiling, built-in cabinets along the perimeter of the garage. And it also, I don't know, some people don't like the look of solar panels on the front face of the roof. And so it had the benefit of hiding the panels from the street. So when you're walking down the street, you're not going to see the solar panels. And we had no idea what people's objections were going to be. And so we tried to do everything we could intentionally to reduce those objections. And so the having the two larger volumes of the garage and the master bedroom be taller did that effect. Initially, the garage was going to be the taller of the two. And the purpose for that was so that the HVAC condensers could be right behind it and you wouldn't see them at all from the street. But then we decided to have a more symmetrical plan and have the two roofs be the same height. And so that lowered the garage roof a little bit and raised the master bedroom roof. But the purpose was really to obscure the back of the house from the front. It was, and it kind of, I think it's interesting. It's a different roof configuration, but it's purposeful. It's not just,
And lowering it as you did to help the neighbors, that was mainly about the shadow effect on the homes?
Okay, now let's be clear about the lowering part. So the low, we call it there's 6 roof planes. Okay, and so we call the garage roof plane number 1. And then plane number 2 is the one immediately to the north of garage number 1. That's where the children's bedrooms are, the Jack and Jill bathroom and White Wife's office. That roof is the lower because it's possibly can, and we're going to use trusses to make it as low as possible. And so we've actually investigated we're now looking at another way to rip a beam to make it even still lower, because, we respect and appreciate the fact that they don't want to see the roof. I get that. And so that same low roof height is true on the opposite side of the master bedroom suite. And then it bumps up again. And those 2 bump up areas, the 2 taller areas, are areas that are adjacent to places that either they don't have windows or their garage or whatever else. And so we didn't think that was a problem. And, I'm very grateful to 287 Cecilia that they did not object to the higher master bedroom height. And that was a very nice concession from them from the very beginning. And we do appreciate that. But I think the design maximizes their sun in the back. And that was the goal, is to make the house as low as possible where it mattered the most, in my opinion. And that was in the back. And so we also intend to soften the effect on the sides by putting the lattice work up and then having some kind of greenery along the lattice. At least from our side, and we tend to have it grow up to 8 feet. We can talk about whether the fence should be 6 feet, 8 feet, or whatever. It's up to them. But it seemed natural to be 8 feet because that's what the existing 48 feet of fence is on between us and 279 Cecilia Way. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will close the public portion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of the hearing and bring it back to the board. Maybe I just mention before we get started, just kind of some guidelines, which would be that anything, we want to make sure that we're considering the application that's being presented. So anything that's like, that was mentioned as part of a compromise that we consider, but would be part of an additional condition of approval. Also, if there's anything that was mentioned, like additional fence heights that would require a variance, then we'd want to make sure that we don't talk about that, because that would have to be something that'd be part of a separate application and properly noticed. So with that, would anybody like to lead us off?
I'll start.
All right, Wayne.
I appreciate all the effort that's gone into this. It's been a very long involved process, and I know you're dealing with an awful lot of adjacent conditions, and that's really what this board does. We look at the adjacencies more than anything else and try to resolve any problems. I think you've done a good job on some things, and I have problems with some of the others. My first concern is you mentioned noise, privacy, and light, Mr. Sorry, I forget. That's your. Those are my primary concerns, and I like the concession of the light fixtures in the living room in particular being lowered to form a grid, floating grid in the space. That's both elegant and it also solves a lot of the problem. You probably will have quite a bit of light spill going up, but you ought to be aware of the fact that that's also a problem. So when you choose your light fixtures, try to choose them so they put 80 or 90% of their light down, not up. Acoustically, I'm really concerned about your roof mounted systems. I think the location over the front door is probably the best one. That roof in there is the best one. And the problem is you really need to shield it on all four sides so that all of the sound bounce goes up. If you leave even 1 inch crack, 1/8 of an inch wide in there, it allows more sound energy out through that 1 inch by 1/8 of an inch crack than an 8-foot by 8-foot wall does. So it's imperative that you box that element over the central roof. And it will be annoying to you, but it should be more annoying to you than it is to your neighbors. And at nighttime is the real problem with that system. I think the other one we didn't mention much was the pool equipment. How that needs to have a minimum of concrete block wall all the way around it. And it is the only way to solve that problem. It too can be open at the top. But that's so the sound goes up, not bouncing to a neighbor's hearing. And that pool equipment will go off in the middle of the night also. The color you've chosen is not my favorite. I lean toward darker colors, and I think you've done some of that. I'm appreciative of the fact that everybody seems to want a White House nowadays, but it stands out in the streetscape a lot more than it should. You want your house to blend in, not stand out. At least that's, I think, what most people do. And I'd like to see you honestly reduce the overall mass of the building some. I think your ceiling heights are all around 9-10 feet. You don't have to have a 10-foot ceiling height everywhere in the house. If you have it in the central space, okay, it's shielded. But the other problem that's compounding your situation is you're raising the floor, and that's actually required by the government in some cases. I don't know if you're in the flood area or not, but the house right across the street from you, we had to raise 2.5 feet when I designed it 20 years ago. And so I don't know how the town is interpreting that right now, but that's a mandatory rise in the house to get it out of the flood zone. And I think your slab solution is probably the best one on that. I'd like to see you lower the ceiling heights, frankly, on the adjacencies. If you draw a line from the roof edge of your adjacent neighbor to your roof edge, it's a 45-degree up line. That means you're towering over their adjacent houses, and there's not much you can do about it with all the constraints, except lower the roofs or perhaps slope them differently on the adjacent to the property lines, rather than making them flat. I think I'll stop there.
No, they're not questions. Yeah.
Questions, I'm just
Yeah.
making my opinions known to you. Yeah, I'll stop
The,
there.
and the discussion is between the board.
Yeah, it's. All right. Jim, Alex. Go ahead, Alex.
So I visited all three properties and met all three parties, so I appreciate the time to walking me through some of the concerns. You know, the things I definitely like about the house, just generally, you know, as we can all see, tear down takes a big toll just on a neighborhood, and there's a lot of effort and time, and I really like the floor plan is it maximizes functionality for a family. So it is to some degree a good investment just in Tiburon, given, you know, we have to sometimes tear down houses and build new ones. So I really do like that. Yeah, I mean, the main concerns is really the noise and the privacy from these 8-foot windows. And I struggle a bit because it seems like the solution is there, and a lot of the parties are comfortable with the solution, but it's in the execution and, oh, how do we make the height of the fence work? You know, things like wind and historical impacts to the existing fences or trellises. But to me, it feels like there's a solution there that we can get there to kind of alleviate some of those privacy concerns. I do think without some solution there, which you know, we've had ideas discussed and to Vice Chair Chong's comments that they're not in the application before us. To getting some of those ironed out, I think would go a long way for all the parties to be comfortable with those 8-foot windows. You know, there is a sense of lost privacy when you're in the other homes. You know, it's not really people looking into the home, it's the light pollution at night. And I get that it is a change. I mean, it's a new house, it will be a change, but I think there's a solution there. It's just it hasn't been ironed out, and it's not through a lack of trying. I think there's been a lot of trying on both parts, and really acknowledge that. And I think just being able to crack that minor wedge right now is I would really like to see. The noise, I also struggle with the noise too, because it seems like it's within code. You know, the town says you have to have you know, below a certain decibel level, and it seems like it conforms to code. I think there's a lot of goodwill from the applicant to move it, and it seems like there's some agreement there. So I'm hopeful too that can be something addressed. I think the other, I don't personal preference, the color isn't a bother. I think There are a lot of white houses, I think, in the neighborhood. I walked my dog yesterday and kind of saw. Just I kind of like that it's not a farmhouse. I think there are a lot of white farmhouses in the neighborhood and it is new, and I think it brings a little bit of uniqueness to the neighborhood, but not being so kind of irregular. The last thing I'll say, which is no one kind of complained about, more of my opinion, I have a bit of a concern with the screening to that front patio. I'd like to see a little more muscle in it. You know, a lot of the neighborhood, a lot of the homes in the neighborhood have front yards. You can see them, you can see into the windows. This is like a master suite that you walk out to with, I don't know if they're bifold doors or they're sliding doors. There's some hedges. I don't think there's anything wrong with the patio. It's just maybe putting a little more structure behind the screening. So there's privacy for, you know, the applicant's family and some privacy from the street. It's a little bit of a personal preference, but something that more of a recommendation if there can be something done just to put a little bit more strength behind the screening. Those are my main kind of comments and concerns at the moment. Again, you know, I think I really appreciate the outreach and the proactive nature of, you know, the website was, I think just I'm sure a lot of work and a good touch. These are hard, right? It's a brand new house. There's a million choices and things are constantly moving and things impact other people. And I think it's just finding, you know, a couple of those things on the margin that can make a big difference for the neighbors. And I think we can get there, but there needs to be a little bit more specificity on those key items.
I want to emphasize again that the overall mass of the home, I find a little distracting in looking at it, especially when you come out and see the story poles. And when you talk about the mass of the home, I really think it is, it comes down to the roof exposure. This is a big home in a smaller neighborhood. It's a beautiful home. I'm not sure there's some of that mass, seeing it for the first time and trying to picture from your renderings how it would fit in there. It does seem perhaps larger than it should be, or on that lot. No one discussed loss of view, and there really isn't a compromise on view. But I guess to try to simplify my thought and feeling of that, I'm still bothered by the overall mass, which I think reflects again on that roof and roof height. That might be something to take a stronger look at of, you know, going from 14 feet to 17 feet on a maximum height is a big change. It does dwarf some of the other homes in the neighborhood, and that is probably the one point that sticks with me the most.
Yeah, so I went out to this morning to take a look at the property. I definitely hear, you know, so I'm also, I guess I'll make my comments and then I'll see if we can't get to some consensus on where we had. You know, the noise was definitely a consideration for me, like having the original location, at least the one in the application that we saw, caused some concerns, especially being that close and, you know, sitting up high where it would essentially echo down. I think the new location that's being proposed is satisfies that concern for me, especially with the enclosures. I had to look up, you know, decibel. Well, I'm not an acoustics engineer, so I had to look up, you know, but the 55 to 56 is somewhere between like a refrigerator hum and a normal conversation, I think, on most of the charts. So I think with the additional enclosure, put that far into the center of the property, I don't see that it would cause any concerns for me. You know, and I should have started out by saying I do like the design. I think it's a beautiful design as far as like a modern home. I think that flat roofs in neighborhoods like this really do a lot to minimize, you know, a roof impact where, you know, you just go straight back. You know, I guess the comment about it being, it's not a neighborhood of small homes. It feels that way from the street just because they've all been developed as one stories. But if you look on Google Earth, you know, it's very clear that these are are large homes that have gotten lots of variances over the years. So many variances that it, prompted the town to change the rules very recently to allow so that we didn't have to make findings for variances, to change the rules so that people could build to what, the neighborhood prefers, which is a one-story, larger coverage of the lot type of application. As far as the, I'm okay with the color. I had a feeling that Jim was gonna go there on wanting darker colors. The overall, so I guess it kind of leaves for me the overall mass being the concern. I don't think that, in this day and age, 10-foot ceilings are unreasonable ceiling heights. So lowering, asking for something lower there, I don't think accomplishes much. From the street, it doesn't really feel like it's too tall. I guess my only concern is the clear story section, right? And would it have less impact on the neighbors by being a little lower? And I tend to agree. A lot of the angles from it's assuming that you're standing by the fence, but if you go to the middle of the yard, I had an opportunity to visit the neighbor to the east and got to see both the impact from inside and also from the yard. And standing from the center of the yard, it definitely pops up. It also, from a design standpoint, that's essentially blocking southern sun that you would want, I would think, to have the maximum amount of sun in the pool for as long as possible, especially in like the winter months. So I think that any height that gets lowered also adds a benefit to the backyard and the sun that you would have in the evening. So in the spirit of finding a way to a consensus, I mean, there's two routes that we can go, right? And maybe before we go into the details of anything, one is, a continuance, which allows the applicant to come back. But I think that we want to be very specific with what type of feedback we would want to see, which leads us to option number 2, which is to basically make those specific options or things that we'd like to see as conditions of approval, and look to approve the application with all the additional conditions. So maybe a quick poll is from everybody before we go down one of the 2 roads. Like, I mean, Jim, do you feel that with specific conditions, we'd be able to get to something from your viewpoint?
There's so many design issues here that
Please speak to the mic.
Yes, sorry.
there's so many design issues here. I'd like to see him come back with changes that we can all see and recognize that they're fixed. One is that acoustic baffling for all of the acoustic equipment, both the roof and the pool. The second is that's an 11-foot ceiling, I believe, in the front of the house rather than a 10-foot. And I know storage is valuable, but it's less valuable 11 feet off the floor. I wouldn't have a problem lowering the building overall a whole foot. I don't think there's going to be much impact from that center clear story and the general run of things. You're not going to see that as much as you're going to see the immediate adjacencies. And one more thing I might consider is investigating clear story windows that put the sill of most of the window above, say, 5 or 5.5 feet, and just drop a section of the window down for code requirement for escape. In other words, make an L-shaped window and use that on the side as more a typical window. And I'd like to see this done so that it affects everybody better.
All right, well,
That's
let's see how everybody else feels about it. Alex, how do you feel?
I guess I had one question about, could we even approve anything with conditions if the changes, say that the fence are not even on the application, if it needs I don't even know the trellis.
I'll double check with our town lawyer here, but I think that the only things that we wouldn't be able to put in a condition would be something that requires a variance that we'd have to notice and make findings on.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, you can condition something that's related to some of the guidelines that you guys are interpreting and in order to make the findings to reach that conclusion.
So we could say something like, we want a 4-foot solid, whatever, around pool equipment, right? but we can't necessarily say that we want a 8-foot fence because an 8-foot fence requires a variance.
And a 2-foot trellis on top of a 6-foot fence is an 8-foot fence.
That will require a variance.
Yes, so
So-
in that case, I think a continuance as well with that would have to add that, right? Or would that have to be a completely separate application since?
No, it would just be, it would basically be a revised application with an additional variance, and then we'd have to, we consider that, and it would be noticed, yeah.
Yeah, I think, my opinion is, we really either need to see that or lowered windows. So those are two major, either one major design change, or, required, application change. So I think a continuance would be required in my opinion.
And,
I'd like to see a continuance.
right, and so, just so that we're providing the applicant, so I want to make sure we've kind of encapsulated everything, which is that revised plans that show the new location of the HVAC units, with, I guess, the spec on the baffles that was talked about tonight. A consideration for lowering the front, it seems like that's come up a couple times, which is the garage height, and potentially look at lowering that. A fence, a taller fence that would require a variance, and or basically sill considerations for different sill heights. Did I miss anything that? Unfortunately, we've closed the public hearing.
Can I interject?
I'm
and just make-
sorry, there was a hand in the,
Oh, sorry.
yeah.
So the existing fencing is on the neighboring properties. So if there was a variance, it would be on the adjacent properties, not the subject property. Just point of
Yeah,
clarification.
thank you. The other thing is that we, any of the kind of proposals that were around, somebody paying for something, we can't compel an applicant to pay for something or whatever. Yeah, so that wouldn't be part of the application. So anything else that we want to make sure that. So, there was some comments on some of the, like, I'll pay for this in the future or whatever, like, yeah, we can't compel an applicant to pay for something, or it's not within our purview. All right, so I think with that, it sounds like we're heading toward a continuance, and if we could get a motion for continuance in this application.
Can I interject one more time? I apologize. Did you want to continue to a date certain? There is a PSA deadline that's July 1st, so we wouldn't, I do have an extension prepared. But do we want to open up to ask the applicant timing or?
I think we would want to know how, if the applicant could bring it back. I mean, we could bring it back very next meeting. It seems a little unlikely, but if the applicant can do it, that's in.
The story poles would need to be readjusted by June 5th. So Monday to meet the deadline for the next meeting, which is June 15th.
Yeah, so just, hey, just to make sure that we're doing this properly, let's do a quick motion to open the public portion of the hearings purely to ask the applicant if they are able to meet the.
Just on scheduling a
on-
future meeting.
purely on scheduling, so motion. To reopen. All right, and do we have a second?
So moved.
All in favor? All right, so we'll reopen the public hearing. And
This is, and this is just for if you can come up, just so you can talk about, the purpose of this is to, so we can schedule this. Because either we have to schedule this for the very next meeting before your Permit Streamlining Act deadline runs. Or if you need more time in order to meet, do various things like the story polls and get those certified and done correctly. You'd have to sign a Permit Streamlining Act extension. And then we could notice this either to a date certain or to just a future meeting.
I think I understand all those parameters, but what I don't understand is what the board's asking us to do. So that's the
Okay,
thing.
so that's a
we-
separate issue. So, and I guess if that's the case, what I have heard, and this is what I'm just gonna say, so we're not going to continue discussion about it until the public portion is done, is they want to be looked at relocating the HVAC, consideration of lowering the front part of the property or the garage, and consideration of additional screening related to the window, whether that be improved fencing or changing the window heights. They might add, they might want to discuss some other things, but the question here is amongst all those changes, how soon do you think you can come back? Do we need to go back beyond the July 1st date?
Okay,
And-
well. So the answer is I'm hearing that everybody's okay with the changing of the HVAC units. We can move the HVAC unit, the story poles for that, no problem. What I'm not clear about is these conversations about things that aren't necessarily correct. For example, the interior.
So we're not going to get into any discussion about the merits of anything they talk about. I understand. So this is a complicated part of
I need to
this.
understand exactly what they are asking us to do. Not, we can't think about what we're gonna do. We need to know what.
So my suggestion then would be then we probably need to push this back beyond the Permit Streamlining Act deadline and go forward with an extension. If there's concern of that.
Well, that doesn't seem reasonable because we're ready to go. And
Okay.
we have the plan, the plans have been drawn up. We've actually, the images I gave you today are drawn in plans. We just couldn't submit them because the
Okay.
plan deadline was already there. So if it's just the story poles for the HVAC units, that's not a problem.
Okay.
But it was not clear is these other
So
conversations about.
maybe
facilities.
I'll help get some clarification.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we'll reclose the public portion of the hearing and just get the board to provide some additional clarification. So let's go through maybe a couple of things that would require a larger story pole changes. Like, so I felt like the clear story could come down a bit. I don't know exactly what that number is. I don't know if anybody else has strong opinions or if I'm in a minority there or if kind of maybe everybody.
I agree with you. I think it could come down a bit, and I also think the overall house could come down a bit. I don't believe it's stuck in stone at 11-foot ceiling heights in the front room, for instance. That's for the scale of the room, it's actually an uncomfortable height to my way of thinking. But I would say that we should encourage the applicant to bring the whole house down, work on privacy on the windows on the side, and do the acoustic work that we've already pretty well defined.
I think from what I've heard this evening from all parties, the biggest concern, noise and that privacy along each side. So addressing with a proposed fence, or if there can't be a proposed fence, the only other alternative is to do something about the height of the windows. So one of those two options in my book. I think the peak roof, it sounded like there was already a discussion among that. I personally, my personal perspective is not a requirement for me to see it much lower than has already been discussed tonight by the applicant.
And I think I just say again about the ceiling height, I guess I would ask, is there a alternative to that ceiling height? And I guess if not, I just would want a little more explanation about that, but I'd like to bring that out as I'd like to see that come down. I think that improves, and again, privacy, which is in my mind, the two biggest issues.
So yeah, I mean, I think that the reason these are difficult and the reason we do continuous is to provide the applicant the ability to address it. And it's what we don't want to do is say, if you do this, this, and this, then the board will approve it, because you never know until you have a chance to look at the story polls, or different people have different opinions about stuff. You know, Jim could say, I want it to definitively be this color. If it's not, there's no possible way it's going to get my vote, right? So yeah, so with that, I think that we want to.
I think we're now back to the question whether or not the applicant would be prepared to go forward on the next hearing, which would be the next hearing?
June 15.
June 15th. So that would require adjusting story polls and submitting plans by what date?
June 5th.
Is this on? Yeah, by June 5th. So it means that 10-day
So
deadline.
basically 4 days
Yeah.
to redo the plan.
Which is, if they're willing to go forward, then we don't need a permanent Streamlining Act deadline extension, and we can just move forward with that hearing date.
Yeah. So I think we provided as much clarification as we can.
And there will be, all this is put up on the website, so you will be able to watch and hear the hearing and see how each board member feels about each aspect.
So do you want to continue it to the June
15th.
15th Saturday board meeting? Okay, all right, so with that, let's get a. No. All right. As long as we have quorum, so motion to continue it
Motion to continue.
to the June
June
15th
15th.
Saturday review board meeting.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
All right, so the application continues to the June 15th design review board meeting. I'll double check the agenda, make sure that's the last item on this evening's agenda. And with that, we adjourn the meeting.
Okay.